Conducting interviews. To get respondents to share information with you, you need to gain their trust. The first step into gaining their trust is to present yourself in a professional manner. This means that you clearly explain what the purpose of your study is, how you will conduct your study, and what you will do with the information gathered through the interview. Being transparent about your method shows the respondent that you know what you are doing and that you have their best interests at heart. You should prepare your interview well, and you should show that you are interested in what your respondent has to say. Sometimes this means that you have to feign to hear something for the first time to give your respondent the feeling that they are telling you something useful. You want to avoid people leaving something out because they assume you already know it. Finally, you should always be polite, even when your respondent says things that you strongly disagree with. Keep in mind that respondents are doing you a favor by dedicating some of their time to talk to you. For the same reason, don't interrupt your respondents. When you want to ask a follow-up question while the respondent is still talking, simply write down the question and pose it when the respondent is finished. This does mean that you should always take notes, even when you are recording the interview. Respondents who are used to being interviewed and those who are not behave differently during an interview. The same goes for respondents who are familiar with academic research and those who are not. Respondents who are used to being interviewed, think of politicians, business executives, or other prominent people, they often like to give their point of view. This can be a great advantage because you don't have to encourage them to talk as much. It could also pose a disadvantage because these types of respondents are more likely to stick to the official story, which may be different from how things really are. They might not like your research project or your questions, and they might tell you so. And they might object to being recorded or to having direct quotes from the interview used in your project. To prevent misunderstandings, make sure to explicitly discuss these issues with your respondents prior to the interview, even when you've already discussed issues of informed consent over email or by phone. Experienced respondents also tend to be busy people. If your interview takes too long, they might get impatient and start looking at the clock. In that case, it could be helpful to mention how many questions you have left so they know that the interview will come to an end soon. People who are not used to being interviewed might be nervous, and it's your job as the interviewer to make your respondents feel at ease. Explain in clear and accessible terms what your project is about. Tell them there are no right or wrong answers and that they do not need to answer a question if they don't want to. Also explain very clearly what you will do with the information collected through the interview and ensure confidentiality. You don't have to go into every detail of your study. This might actually be a little bit intimidating to a person not familiar with academic research. Instead, stick to a 1-minute summary of your project, which includes a description of your topic and the types of questions that you will ask. Inexperienced respondents are sometimes afraid that their answers are somehow wrong, in the sense that they are not useful to the researcher. In that case, the interviewer needs to put the respondent at ease without explicitly stating the answer is right or wrong, because that would be leading the respondent. It is best to repeat again that there are no right or wrong answers, and that each answer they are prepared to give is appreciated. Here are a few more pieces of advice. Restate what the respondent has said before moving on to the next question. This demonstrates that you are listening and that you understood what they have been saying. The respondent can correct you if you misunderstood something. Be careful to not reinterpret the respondent's answer and use their own language as much as possible. If you are not entirely sure what the respondent meant with a particular answer, don't be afraid to ask. It is often helpful to ask for a practical example rather than having the respondent repeat their initial answer. Use silence to your advantage. Most people get uncomfortable when a conversation falls quiet. Their response will be to continue talking. You can use silence in your interview to get the respondent to say more. If you notice that a respondent is reluctant to answer your question, don't push too much to get an answer. Simply rephrase the question and ask again at a later point in the interview. We've now given you some practical advice to get the most out of your interviews. Let's have a look at what you should do after the interview has taken place.